Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Marriage Matters. This is a show where we talk about marriage matters because marriage matters. Yeah. So I hadn't said that in a long time.
I know.
So those of you who are watching for the very first time, my name is Glenn Coleman, and I'm joined by my wife,
Tanya Coleman.
And we're just here today, as always, just to give you some tips and tricks. I hadn't said that
You
in a
hadn't
long
said that
time.
in a long time either.
Some tips and tricks. So we're kind of getting back to basics here, but some tips and tricks that help you just thrive in marriage.
Yeah,
I like that word, thrive.
me too.
You know, so how's everything going in your world?
Everything is going good. Still in this quarantine world, this quarantine life.
Yep.
It's going well.
Living that quarantine life, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You know.
making it work.
You know, this is one of the reasons, before we get started with, you know, what we want to talk about today, this is one of the reasons that we do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Is because, you know, just like in everything else, you know, we are taught, you know, that to save,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like Dave Ramsey, you know, he says you need to have about 6 months
Mm-hmm.
of your operating expenses, your living expenses saved for a rainy day, for when things happen.
Right.
You know, and this is a great example of that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same is true in marriage. That's why we teach what we teach, because it's easier to go through hard times when your marriage is already it's not perfect, but you've been working on it.
Yeah, it's in a good place.
You know, I know I've been reading the articles. I've been listening to people talk about this. And this is one of those times where, man, if you don't have a great relationship, you know, with your spouse, with your kids, and you're stuck in the house with them. So you can either be in the mindset of, man, I'm stuck in this house with these people, or I get to spend this time with these people.
Right.
And I believe that as far as I'm concerned, I'm excited because I get to be, I don't know if the last time I've spent this much time with my family.
Yeah, I agree. Completely agree.
And so our point is, this is why we do what we do, because we want you to do the things that are required to work on your marriage. So that way, when things do happen, you know, the bottom doesn't fall out, you know, and that's what it's all about. It's just like everything else. Like, you know, we talk about, there's a guy, not me, but there's a guy that I follow, and he had an accident where he a few years ago, he tore both ACLs in his knee, and at the same time.
Yeah.
And the doctor was telling him, because his body was in such great shape, he would only have to have surgery on one of his knees. And he was just using it as an example, you know, that it's the same thing. It's the same way with marriage, right? When you do that, when you're doing the things to ensure your relationship grows and not just a set it and forget it kind of marriage, then when things happen, when COVID-19 happens, when somebody loses a job, when a loved one passes away, that added pressure doesn't have the potential to take out your marriage.
That's absolutely true.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And I think we have choices when we're in circumstances and situations that add pressure and that are outside of the norm, that may be uncomfortable. We have a choice to either allow it to pull us apart, or we choose to bridge, you know, closer together. Yeah. And that takes intentionality. You have to make up your mind and do that on purpose. Now, there have been some moments where it's just like, okay, I'm going to go, you know, do my thing in here. You go do your thing in there. The kids are doing their thing, because you take that time to yourself.
I think you have to have that.
You have to have that. But for the most part, you know, for us, we have chosen, or we've chosen, but we're just naturally enjoying this time together, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And it goes back to what I said earlier. That's because we've taken the opportunities, we've taken the time to work on our relationship.
Right.
And if you haven't done that, it's never too late. Even in COVID-19, what a great opportunity to have the time. Because that's one of the things people say is, I don't have time.
Right.
Anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on that. I want to talk about...
That's a different podcast.
Yeah, I want to talk about what we plan on talking about today, because it's one of those things that you have to work on.
Yeah.
And this is another conversation about communication.
Another conversation about communication.
And I know you've probably said, I know you've heard us talk about communication before, but I've just really felt the need to do it again. We were just, my oldest daughter and I, we had went to Lowe's, and there's a project that her and I are going to be working on together. So we went to Lowe's just to look at some different materials. And as we're walking out of Lowe's, there's a couple walking into Lowe's, and the husband tells the wife, "Would you please just shut up?" And I was just like, wow, I wanted to go up to them right then and say, "Hey, have you ever watched the Marriage Matters podcast?" But I didn't. I didn't. But I think, especially now, man, communication is such a vital. Communication is the blood of your relationship. It's the blood of your relationship.
That's good.
It's what brings, your blood it oxygenates your body. It brings nutrients to your body. And it's the same way with communication. And if there's areas in your marriage, in your relationships that you are not communicating about, guess what? Those areas are not getting life. They're not getting oxygen. They're not getting the nutrients and the things that they need to grow. Whatever the areas that are, if it's finances, if you're not communicating about finances, your finances are not growing. If you're not communicating about sex, then chances are your sex life is not growing. It's not getting better. Maybe somebody's enjoying it. Maybe somebody's not.
Right.
So the kids. What else?
Just your future decisions about what's
area,
coming up.
Yeah. So one thing I want to talk about, and we can start off here, and just being vulnerable and transparent right now. I want to talk about the fear of transparency and vulnerability. Because I can honestly say, that's something that, don't get me wrong, and I'm not saying that I've arrived or I'm perfect in this area, but it's an area that I'm working on, and I think I've gotten better. But, communicate, and I was just going to say this. One of the things Tanya calls these our four points of communication. And we like to say that we communicate openly, honestly, often about everything. And that's something that I had to work at because, and especially I believe, and I can't speak for all women, but I know my wife, but, here's a great example. So if I'm stressed out about something, about finance, that's just money. That's a lot of people, that's an area that you can be stressed out about. So if I'm stressed out about money and I'm worried about something, whatever, and I'm processing all of this anxiety and I'm holding on to it, my tendency has not been and still is not at times, I'm working, is not to go to my wife and say, "Hey, I'm really concerned about this.
Right.
I'm really concerned about this because, I don't know, whatever it is, something happened here and I'm concerned about this." So what I'm going to do is I'm going to internalize that, and I'm not going to share that. And in my mind, as the man, I feel like I have to be strong. And that's my definition of being strong.
Sure.
My definition is like I have to be strong. I have to bear this burden. Silence your cell phone, please.
Sorry.
Let me communicate that. No.
It was on my mind right before we started, and I forgot. Okay.
But I have to be strong to bear this up. And I feel like it's like I don't want to share my worries with you because I feel like I don't want you to be worried and for me to be worried. Somebody has to be strong in their relationship. But what Tanya has shared with me is she wants to know those things. That's because for her, that's truly, that's true intimacy. That's true, what's the word? I guess intimacy.
It's transparency. And, because like you say, me, I know you. And so I know when there is something brewing, something that you're processing in your mind. And when you don't communicate it, to me, then, I can pray but at the same time, I'm also concerned about what's going on, and I want to know what's going on. So you're not giving me the opportunity to help. You know, you're not giving me the opportunity to help, and let's just talk it through. Let's come up with some ideas, come up with a plan. You know, giving me some specifics to pray about.
Yeah.
You know,
and so not only that, not only me fearing, I don't want you to know that I'm. And I've kind of walked through all of that, and there's many different levels to why I think that way, or I was thinking that way. But the other part of it is, one of the reasons why is I was afraid to really let you know my fears. And again, there's levels to that.
right?
But I'm learning that you don't want, for you, being a man or being strong is not someone who doesn't talk about those things. You want me to, and it doesn't make me any weaker.
Correct.
And actually, I'm learning that true courage is to be vulnerable.
Absolutely.
I mean, it takes a lot of courage. And so communication, what I'm learning is true communication and transparent. All those things is just like anything else. If I was if I played violin, and let's say as in my teenage years, I was really great. I was really good at being, playing, as a great violinist. And let's say after I turned 16, I put the violin down, and then 40 years later, I picked the violin up. Well, I can guarantee you this, that I won't be as proficient in it as I was when I was 16, when I played every day and I practiced every day. Same thing with communication. Communication must be practiced. It's something that has to happen. And you have to be brave enough, and you have to be bold enough to communicate, to be transparent, to be vulnerable, to be vulnerable. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is a strength. It's one of those things. Vulnerability can be closely related to humility. And many people see, being vulnerable, because if you look up a definition, it's going to talk more about being exposed to danger and things like that. Well, in essence, because you are being vulnerable, you are taking a chance of your spouse, not receiving what you're saying, not understanding what you're saying, things like that. But when you're in a good place, your spouse is able to process what you're saying and then give you the support and the appropriate feedback, and it also opens up a door for them to feel more comfortable and safe with being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so it does take a lot of strength. It does take a lot of courage to be that vulnerable and that open with people, especially with your spouse. But who else would you rather have that relationship with on this earth, that you can trust that much, Yeah. We all have to have and need a safe place. And I believe that God designed marriage to be that safe place,
So you've got to listen, guys and girls. You've got to find a way to communicate, especially the things that are just eating at you, the things that you've been struggling to say, you don't know how to say. I know, and I've been there. I'm still there. I'm not saying that I'm perfect in this, but I'm growing in this.
You're growing, yeah.
So you've got, because if not, it's going to. So here's how I always say this. One of my reasons for not telling Tanya everything and being totally honest and totally transparent with her is because if I tell her this, she may get mad at me. She may get offended me. So in an effort to keep the peace in the house, I'm not going to say anything. But here's what I found out about that. In an effort to keep the peace out here, there's no peace in here.
Right.
And if there's no peace in here, there can be no peace out here. Because now, and you've heard me say this before, I'm treating her differently. I'm giving her the silent treatment. And sometimes not even on purpose.
Right.
It's just, it's a reaction or a consequence or a reaction to me holding all that stuff in.
Right.
Now, what you don't want to do is just regurgitate everything.
Right.
And, you know, so that we're going to talk about some ways to do that, you
Right.
know. And, you know, so it's time out for, you know, my favorite thing, you know, one of my favorite words, Tanya, are you okay? I'm fine. And so our good friend, well, not our good friends, but one day our good friends, I always said we did meet them. Ashley, Dave and Ashley Willis, the Naked Marriage. But they say this, they say, here's what fine means. It means faking, ignoring, neglecting, and evading.
Yeah.
So when you're saying, I'm fine, you're faking, you're ignoring, you're neglecting, and evading. And I can honestly say many times when I say, I'm fine, I'm really not. I'm really not. And so you've got to find a way. You've got to find the courage. And we're going to try to give you some tools that'll maybe help you today to push past the fear. And that's what it is, the fear of communicating, the fear of being honest. And I'm telling you that, you know, there's been some times where Tanya and I have had some conversations, and I was so afraid to tell her these things because I didn't want to hurt her feelings. I didn't want her to know I thought this way. And there's been some times where I've told her some things and she got upset about it.
Right.
And you have to, and it's okay. You have to give each other room for that. But we came back to the table and we were able to work through some things and talk through some things. And you know what? Guess what? It brought us closer.
Right. Here's what we can expect is that marriage is going to be rainbows and butterflies. You know, that you are never going to have moments where
you said, here's what we can't
expect.
Okay, yeah.
Where marriage is going to be rainbows and butterflies, where there will never be moments of communication errors. You know how sometimes you get those errors, you know, when you're dealing with technology. Well, when we're dealing with one another, there will be errors. There may be some red lights flashing, you know. It's never going to be perfect all the time because we are two imperfect human beings working to become one. We are one in spirit when we say I do, but it's a lifetime process of actually becoming one, you know? So there will be moments where you may be upset with your spouse may be upset with you, where they may be vulnerable with you, or you may be vulnerable with them, and the other person is kind of hurt, they're stunned, they're shocked, and they need a moment to process that. That's fine. Give them that time. If y'all need to walk away, come back to the table. If tears are shed or what have you, that's fine. But you know what's important? Come back to the table. Okay, now that you've processed it, now let's talk through this. That does not mean that we have to go our separate ways and this thing is over and you don't love me. No, it's not that. It's that we are trying to do our best to live this life together, and we are two different people. We're going to have different perspectives. We're going to have different opinions, but the goal is that we communicate well enough that we can come to an agreement on whatever the issue is.
Yeah. So the first thing I want you to know that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to find your voice.
Yes.
You're going to have to find your voice. You're going to have to find in you the ability to say, you know what, I'm not fine. Or you know what, I do have something to say. I do have an opinion about this. You're going to have to do that. And you're going to just have to do it. There's no other way I can tell you. You're going to have to find your voice. You're going to have to find a way to say when you're upset.
And
go
if
ahead.
I can add to that, find your voice and also find the voice that will benefit the marriage. So when I say that is find your voice to say, hey, I do have something to say about that. No, I'm not okay with that. But your communication does not have to be, you know, Glenn used the word earlier. I think I used it before. It does not have to be vomiting over your spouse, right? It does not have to be ugly and nasty and negative is what we mean when we say that.
She means figuratively vomiting.
Correct.
I just don't want to vomiting on your spouse.
Right.
No.
But when you communicate what it is that you need to say, always make sure that you're doing it in a way that is healthy and that is going to benefit the marriage. Okay, keep going.
So the other thing is when you find your voice, and when I say find your voice, I don't mean actually a voice. I'm talking about the voice inside of you. You have to find that and find the ability to use it The other thing is you have to do is now you have to use your words. Now, I know that's very elementary. And Tanya tells our girls that all the time. Use your words. Use your words. But it's amazing that even as adults, we still don't know how to use our words. We don't know how to identify feelings.
Yeah.
And I was so amazed at myself. I'm 41. I'm a 41-year-old man. Yes, I am 41. I know I don't look it, except for the hair. Anyway, but I had to figure out, okay, what am I feeling?
Right.
Because here's the other thing is, once I figured out what I'm feeling, then I can figure out the other thing I always ask. So when I get into this mode of trying to be transparent, trying to be vulnerable, I ask myself two questions. Number one is, what am I feeling? Number two is, why am I feeling? You know, because sometimes it's not Tanya, sometimes it's me.
Yep.
The reason why am I feeling that way? So anyway, this is a tool that, and you can look this up on Google, and it's probably hard for you to see this, but this is a emotion wheel. Some people have it's more of a chart form, but anyway, and I know you probably think I don't need that, but I'm telling you, you'd be so surprised. So I just look at this sometimes, especially like when I'm feeling a certain way, and it has all these emotions on there, and it helps you to process, and it also helps you to now communicate what you're really feeling to your spouse. You know,
give us some examples of that main the words that we usually communicate, but what else can those words indicate?
So there's some people say there's what is like, I think it's 4 true emotions. Is sad, mad, it's happy, sad, mad, and afraid. Those like are your 4, but this one has 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not 6. So it's a mad, sad, peaceful, powerful, joyful, and scared. So a good example is so it branches off. So it says mad, then you can say I'm feeling mad, but let's get a little bit, let's pinpoint that. So hurt.
Yes.
So that's the next level. So I'm mad, but I'm really saying I'm hurt. And then it goes even further than that. It could to a reaction, I feel distant.
Right.
Or I'm distancing myself from you. So that's just a way to help you to kind of really hone in on what am I really feeling.
Right.
So that helps me to communicate that.
Right. So when a person is feeling mad or they're feeling angry, then typically, you know, whatever their behavior is, for some people it's yelling, screaming, you know, what have you. For some people, they get quiet. And the behavior, because I want you to know that I'm upset with you, the behavior comes across as mad or angry. But what most people, because they haven't searched deep enough or they don't want to be vulnerable enough, they won't say, I'm hurt. Or you hurt me. Yeah. You know, because that sounds weak. Yeah. You know, and so we have to learn how to tap into our words, use our words, and say what we mean and mean what we say, right? Yeah. We have to own that. Learn to own your feelings. And your marriage is the best place to learn to own your feelings. Start communicating to your spouse, not you always say or do this, but when this happened or when this was said, I felt like this.
Yeah, so that's using I statements instead of you statements. So if I say, I really felt hurt, instead of telling Tanya, you really hurt me. Right. So it kind of takes it.
You're not putting the blame on me. Right. When you say you did this, you're putting the blame on the other person. But when you say I felt this way, you're taking responsibility for your own feelings without putting the blame on the other person. And we allow them the time to process and come to taking responsibility for their part on their own.
Yeah. So number 1, you got to find your voice. Number 2, you got to use your words. And the third thing I'm going to say is you have to take the time, make the time to actually communicate. Yes. And another issue, another problem that I think a lot of couples have, and we are guilty of this, is a lot of times we always talk on, we stay at the surface level,
Right.
and we talk about the things that, we talk
Everyday
about
things.
the everyday things, and we never really, because to talk about the deep things, you have to make time for that.
That's right.
Because you don't want to talk about these things in passing.
Right.
These are not the ones you don't send these in text messages. Right. You don't going out the house. Oh yeah, by the way, you really hurt me when you said that, and you walk out.
I'll talk to you later.
I'll talk to you. No, you have to make the time. You have to maybe I don't know, when you guys have some time to maybe get the kids away, or you got to make that time to actually communicate these things. And some tools that could help you even in that is, I always say this: if you're having trouble communicating your feelings, or write them down. Yeah. And again, I know that seems like, I'm telling you, right? Because number one, that'll do a couple of things. It's going to help you stay on stay on track, and not go all off on what happened 5 years ago and all. No, write it down, and it also helps you to find the words, and not, like Tanya said, not have one of those word vomits to where you just everything's coming out. Right. And the other thing, I've heard someone say this. I forgot who it was, but use your voice memos. Record yourself saying it, right? So you can hear
to yourself.
How am I perceiving that? Because here's the other thing about communication: communication is not just talking. Communication is talking in a way to ensure that the other person understands, right? And for the other person, communication is understanding. So communication hasn't completed just because I said something. Communication is only complete when the other person understands it.
And how do I check? How do I check for understanding? How do I know that I've understood what you said?
Well, number one, when you can say it back to me, and to ensure that you understand what A, B, and C. But really, to me, the true measure of understanding is when you make efforts to change your actions. Does that make sense? So
I think, and I was trying to get, I guess, the first thing you said was absolutely right. When I'm able to repeat back to you what it is that I heard you say. And so that I have clarity on what you said. That's the first step. And then the second step is, now I am putting some action to helping to resolve this issue that is present for you, because I love you, because you're my spouse, and I want to do that for you. Yeah.
And I know we're kind of running short on time, but there's a couple of things that I want to bring out. Is also remember your nonverbals.
Yeah, that's really important.
On both sides. Yeah. For when you're communicating, and the person who is receiving.
The receiver.
Because, like, for instance, when Tanya would ask me, is everything okay? I'm fine. Well, I'm saying I'm okay, but my nonverbals are saying, and so for her, it lets her know, okay,
he's not fine.
Yeah, something's going on here. And so it could help her. One good thing, being that I'm really working on this area about communication and feeling my feelings, she can come to me and say something like, hey, I know I asked you if you're okay, and I know you said you're okay, but I just really see, and by your actions and these things, that you're not okay. So you don't want to talk about what's going on? Right. So that'd be a great way for you to help, especially a person, like I said, like me. I thought I was a good communicator, but I wasn't. I was a good talker.
That's good.
But I wasn't a good communicator.
And can I jump in and say this, that if you go and you ask your spouse that question, and they tell you, no, I'm not ready to talk about it, or not now, give me some time, respect that. Don't say, well, we need to talk about it now. We're supposed to be communicating openly and honestly about everything all the time. And give them that time, give them that space, respect that, and know that you have opened that door, leave the door open so that when they're ready, they can just walk right on in and you guys can sit down and have that conversation. We don't process the same.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk most of the time. I want to talk right now
Mm-hmm.
about it. Glenn needs more time to process and then come and let's sit down and talk about it. And so you have to learn and know your spouse and respect their feelings, because we're not the same person. We are still working to become one. But God created us differently, so we're not ever going to do everything the same.
And I will say that's good, but from my perspective in that, I also have to realize that, okay, Tanya needs to talk about this.
Right.
So even though she's giving me time to process, I have to respect her
Right.
at the same time and say, okay, I need to eventually, because a lot of times what happens is you say, let me think about it. And then you go to think about it and a day goes by, 2 days goes by.
Evade.
And then, you're evading. And then you push that under the rug and you keep pushing stuff under the rug, and pretty soon your rug is a foot off the ground because of all the stuff that's under it. Yeah, so keep in mind your nonverbals. So for the person that's communicating and for the person that's receiving, both of you need to pay attention to that nonverbals to help each other to really get to honesty. Because that's what we're trying to get to, is to really be open and honest. And just be and see, here's the deal. Here's the truth. When I told Tanya this, we were talking about communication and just being honest. And I told her, I said, I don't know if you want to really know everything that goes through my mind. I don't know if you really are ready for it. But here's the deal. That's what love is. Love is, what you gonna say?
It makes me think about that movie. You want to know the truth? You can't
handle
the truth.
You don't really want to know what I think. But that's what love. Yeah. Love is seeing a person for who they really are. Yeah. And still loving that person.
That's it.
So many times, so many people you don't really even know. Your spouse has never met you.
Yes.
Because you are living in this. Woo. You're living in you're trying to be the person who you think your spouse wants you to be.
And all they know is the facade.
Yep. And they really don't know. And that's how Tanya and I, we were talking. I said, this is why sometimes people be married for 25 years and they get divorced. Right. And it's like, whoa, what happened? And after 25 years, the real person came out and they were like, whoa, what's going on? You got what I'm saying?
Right.
So you have the courage. Look, just put it out there. You gotta put it out there and give each other grace. I gotta give her grace because if I put this out here, she may be upset. Give her grace for that. Yep. She has to give me grace because I'm trying to be open and transparent. Okay. So the other thing I want to talk about is motive. Yeah. So it's not just what you say, it's why you say. Yeah. Because if I'm saying this to hurt her feelings, right, or to, give her a little jab there, then that's not communication. Right. Okay. But if I'm saying something it's hard, I got to say this, it's hard for me to say, but the ultimate goal in me saying this is because I want our relationship to be better. So motive is huge.
And if I can, ladies, and make sure that you're not saying things just to get your way. Sometimes we have the tendency, and I know men do it too, but I see it more with women, to be manipulative, to try to get their way about something. That's not, you don't want to use those vulnerable moments just to get your way. That's not true vulnerability. You want to, like Glenn said, you're communicating for the purpose of helping the marriage and healing the marriage, growing the marriage, making it better and making it whole, keeping it whole, wherever you are. That's your purpose in communicating openly, honestly about everything, And
I'll say this too, that if you do that, you're going to shut down. They're not going to want to be open and honest with you. So, I think that's all. We covered all the points that we had wrote down. So we gave you a lot of things, but look, at the end of the day, you've got to find a way to communicate. Look, maybe you need a mediator. Reach out to a friend who maybe can sit with you, another couple who can sit with you and help you process through these things. Right.
Don't be afraid of that.
Don't be afraid.
Ask for help.
For help. Okay, but you've gotta, because it's gonna eat at you, which eventually it's gonna eat at the marriage. Right. Okay. Go ahead. I see you.
I wanted to make sure that we close with the scripture. I want to.
Yeah. That was gonna be my last thing.
All right. I want to make sure. All right.
Okay. Thanks for communicating that.
Yes.
But so we wanted to close with this scripture, and it's Ephesians 4:15. And it says, rather let our lives lovingly express truth in all things, speaking truly, dealing truly, and living truly. So that's just part A of that scripture. But you got to remember, communication, the basis for that has to be love. Yeah. You know, it's like we tell our kids, when we're chastising our kids, what do we say? It's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt me
more than it
hurts you. Why? Because it's out of love. The end result, I'm not doing this because I like correcting you. Right. I don't get joy from this. I tell my girls this all the time. I would rather just veg out in front of TV and watch, TV all day long and not correct you. That would be so much easier. That would make my life so much easier. But because I love you, I correct you. Well, with your spouse, we're not correcting them, but we're communicating. Right. It would be so much easier to just sweep everything under the rug and not talk about it and not talk about your feelings and not talk about how that really hurt me and not deal with the issues. But because I love you, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to show you my true self because I love you. And that's what true love is. So, number one, communication has to be done from a place of love. And the Bible says this, love never fails. That's right. So if you're communicating from a place of love, even though what you're saying may be a hard pill. I mean, Tanya told me some things that it was a hard pill for me to swallow. In other words, I thought I was here, but she was like, nah, you're really here. So that was hard for me to swallow, but she wasn't saying it to hurt me. Hurtful. And I'm going to be honest. And at the time when she told me those things, it made me feel, I was like, oh man. But I said, okay, I know, okay, I need to grow. I need to do the things. I need to get some help to get to this area.
Right. And it wasn't easy to say either. I had to work up the courage and the nerve to say it. It wasn't just, me telling you whatever, but I had to be vulnerable and be transparent and work up that courage.
So it goes both ways.
It does.
So it goes both. So look, man, if you want to breathe life into your relationship, you've got to start communicating. You got to start talking more than just about, what bill needs to be paid, who needs to be dropped off where, what are we going to have for dinner tonight? Right. You need to talk about the deep things, the things that really matter. Yeah. Because if you're taking care of all of this stuff up here and you don't handle this, then it's not, this up here is not going to sustain. No. It's not going to sustain your relationship. You got to
take care of that foundation.
All right. So this has been another conversation about communication. And we'll probably have more. Yes. So look, man, if you've enjoyed this, please, like we say, like, share, comment, join the community. Yes. And make
sure you subscribe to the YouTube page. Yeah, we and said that. Click the little bell to make sure that you get the alert when a new video comes out. Yeah. Just, follow us. We're on Instagram. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. Where else are we?
That's it.
Okay.
Somebody said we need to get a Twitter page, but I don't know. I'm not really big.
We're working our way there. Yeah.
So that's all we got for you today. Communication, guys. You gotta talk it out. You gotta talk about it. You gotta talk about it. Find a way to talk about it. You gotta talk about it.
Yes.
Because it's not gonna get any better. It's never gonna change until you talk about it. So this is Glenn and Tanya Coleman saying, Your marriage matters. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.